Wow. Wow, wow, wow. There's a part of me that doesn't even know where to start, and there's a part of me that just wants to go, blah, 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 blah. This is crazy. First of all, welcome. Welcome, guys. Welcome to my new movie review for the 2021 movie, The Suicide Squad. Yes, The Suicide Squad. Far out. Oh my gosh. Wow. So, I'm going to roll the introduction to my movie review, guys, give you the cast, the director, all the good stuff, and then I'm going to tell you my personal thoughts on this movie. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tell you something straight off the bat that I didn't like about this film, and there is only one element of this film that I didn't like. So, without further ado, guys, if those of you who are new to my channel, it's so good to have you here, and I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and leave a thumbs up on this review. Thank you so much for doing that, guys. I really appreciate it. That means so much to me. So yeah, as I said, guys, without further ado, straight after this intro, I'll give you my thoughts on The Suicide Squad. Let's roll that intro. The Suicide Squad. Synopsis. Supervillains Harley Quinn, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, and a collection of nutty cons at Belle Reve prison join the super-secret, super-shady Task Force X as they are dropped off at the remote, enemy-infused island of Corto Maltese. First off, we have Margot Robbie reprising her role as Harley Quinn, who played Harley Quinn back in 2016 in The Suicide Squad, and also Birds of Prey in 2020, and now Harley Quinn in The Suicide Squad. Next up, we have Idris Elba, this time playing the role as Bloodsport, joining the cast of The Suicide Squad. Also joining the cast of The Suicide Squad, we have John Cena playing the role as Peacemaker. And Joel Kinnaman reprising his role back from 2016 Suicide Squad as back again as Rick Flag. And Sylvester Stallone as King Shark. Yes, you heard me. Sylvester Stallone actually playing a shark in The Suicide Squad. And the director of The Suicide Squad, we have James Gunn, who all the way over from Marvel to do his first ever DC film. Yes, The Suicide Squad. Rated MA15+. 2021 action adventure comedy movie, 2 hours and 12 minutes long. This film is huge. It's huge. This film is clearly a mammoth undertaking. I mean, massive. James Gunn. Wow, there's so many things that you can say about this movie. And for those of you who are new to my channel and don't know, I actually don't do spoilers in my movie review at all, because I just don't think spoilers are fair, guys, at all. I want to tell you about an element of this film that I didn't like. Okay, I didn't like this element of this film. Now, I've sadly, and I don't even really want to say this, really, but I genuinely mean this. I actually haven't been a fan at all of Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. She plays the character good, but I've just seen so many flaws throughout the character in the journey that she's been on, and it hasn't worked for me personally. It really hasn't, which is so sad. And she has her own element in this movie. It's probably around about the middle of the film, and it's a stretch, and it's just her. It's none of the rest of the squad. It's just her. And James Gunn has basically said, here, we're going to make your character shine for a piece of the film, and then, they'll get back into the rest of the squad. And I just found her comic element of her character didn't at all work in this film, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. I really, really, really didn't find just her character in this movie worked. And I don't like talking bad about a film, specifically a film of this caliber, especially the fact that Margot Robbie's Australian. I don't know if you knew that, but yeah, she's Australian. But she just didn't work for me in this film. That element of the movie. And the rest of it she blended in well. But that's seriously, and it really, really bugs me to have to say that, because I know how many fans she has out there. I know how many people out there are just mega Margot Robbie fans, and specifically Harley Quinn. But all film is subjective, guys, and all characters are subjective. I mean, there's two specific characters in Hollywood who I personally can't stand at all. I mean, literally, I'm not even going to tell you who they are, and you probably couldn't even guess. But they just drive me nuts, and I can't stand them being in any films. And they've been in some mega films that I have just not liked, especially one guy got his solo movie, and I just hated it so bad. Anyway, the Suicide Squad. So there is a character in this movie. Now, I'm interested to know this. Leave your comments in the comment section below. I'd really love to know this. Do you guys know about the visual trick where there's a group of people, like maybe 10 people, or maybe 6 people, and they're passing balls in between this circle, and you have to guess how many times the ball is passed in that circle? Now, all of a sudden, and they've actually, in the Suicide Squad, they actually literally did this, and he's not even hidden at all, to any degree at all. He's right in your face, but just because of the commotion and the action happening in the scene, they actually point to it, and you're just like, that is just so funny. So they're throwing this trickery thing. They're throwing the ball, and a monkey literally walks in the center of them, does a dance, and then just keeps walking. But you're so focused on counting how many times they've thrown the ball. That element of eye trick, it is technically eye trickery, because you're not actually focusing on him. Your mind is elsewhere. And then this is like probably maybe towards the end of the film, really. And they do that in this movie. And it is so funny. I mean, it is so unbelievably, hilariously funny. I mean, so funny. I just was like, that is just genius filmmaking. Because one, no director does that ever. And two, the way it is executed works perfectly with the rest of this film, honestly. Now, like I said at the beginning of this review, guys, there are some if you haven't seen, and people in Australia won't have, especially in Queensland, won't have seen this movie as yet, because it hasn't been released here yet. But obviously, if you have VPN and you can watch it. Like, that's literally the only way you can watch it is buying a VPN and then downloading HBO Max. That's literally the only way. Speaking of that, I'm a little tiny bit annoyed with Binge, because that was the whole point behind Binge. I was a little bit bugged about that, because I intentionally purchased Binge because they were releasing stuff from HBO on Binge, and they didn't. And I was a little bit annoyed about that, because that was the whole purpose of getting Binge, but they didn't drop it on Binge. So unless you have a VPN, you can't get this movie. And I think that is really, really, really sad. And quite honestly, I just think it's disappointing of Binge to do that. But it is what it is. And, this movie is huge. It's so huge. And I just want to let you know something. And again, it's not a spoiler. It's just something that she can do. And this is probably a positive side of putting Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn down. This is a positive thing about her character. So, I want to try and, win myself over here in a sense. she has a water scene, a water sequence, a water scene in this movie. Okay, she has a water scene. Now, those of you who don't know, you're about to know, and this has nothing to do with the trivia at the rest of this movie review, that Margot Robbie can actually, that I'm aware of, I think it's 5. I think it's 5. It could be longer than that now, but I believe it's 5. She has actually been trained professionally to hold her breath underwater for 5 minutes. You're like, get out, no way, no one can do that. Google it. She can. It's a thing. It's real. It's an absolute thing. Margot Robbie can hold her breath underwater for 5 minutes. I think it might even be more than 5 minutes, but it's like 5 minutes. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so because of the fact that she can do that, she did. And there's a sequence in this movie, and that sequence in this movie is absolutely visually stunning. In fact, this movie, the color palette of this movie is stunning, is visually brilliant, is outstandingly breathtaking. The character chemistry in this movie is so on point. The storyline is so brilliantly executed with every character imaginable. The dialogue in its elements of humor is so funny, is hilariously funny. The action in this movie is to the highest level of action in a film that you will ever see in a movie ever. This movie is literally groundbreakingly, brilliantly masterful. And I mean that. I really mean that. This movie is so good. And I mean, it is so good. It's breathtakingly brilliant. Those of you who have been following me for any period of time, I'm going to let you know on something crazy. I have not done this in a really, really, really long time. Okay? Does the Suicide Squad have in its core element the essential thing that film needs to be in its core element? And that's what I like to call, in my personal opinion, guys, and those of you who've been following me for any period of time knows exactly what I'm about to say right now. Ready? In 3, 2, 1. That's right, guys. Rewatchability. Does the Suicide Squad have rewatchability? And that I'll tell you right now, guys. The reason why I say yes, you ready for it? I watched it literally straight after I watched it. Yeah. Yep. Literally. I finished watching it, and if you don't know, you're about to know. There's two post-credit scenes. There's a credit scene, they roll the title, boom, and then they let that go for a bit, and then there's a post-credit scene. And then right after all the credits roll, all of them roll, then there's a post-credit scene, and that's the end of the film in its completion. Wow. This movie was so rewatchable that I watched it from start to finish twice right after each other. Yeah. Unbelievably. The brilliance behind this movie is just a work of a professional genius. Seriously. This movie stands the test of time to such a high development and such a degree. James Gunn is literally going to be, Warner Brothers was like, what do you want to do? Now, those of you who have seen the trailer for this, I'm going to let you know something about the trailer. They show something in the trailer at the end of this trailer that has something to do with the kaiju, like something massive that's not from our planet. What that is and how James Gunn made that look like is so good and so impressive, it blew my mind. Now, those who have been to Queensland, Australia on the Gold Coast, you'll know this if you've been to this attraction. It's called Warner Brothers Movie World on the Gold Coast. Okay, Warner Brothers Movie World, and it's on the Gold Coast, and it's an attraction. It's a theme park. In that theme park, we have a ride called the Justice League, and it's a sit-down ride, and you shoot with a laser. You shoot stuff. Okay, on that ride, they have the kaiju on that ride, as in like it's you. That's what you have. That's a massive element of this ride, legitimately, like seriously, and it is incredible. One of the things that I kind of thought was a little bit silly, a little tiny bit silly in this movie, is Viola Davis. She actually references Superman. Henry Cavill. He's so awesome. She actually references Superman, played by Henry Cavill. And she says that, this is in the trailer, that Bloodsport put him in the ICU by shooting him with a kryptonite bullet. And I was like, no, I don't like it. I don't agree with it. And that's, Now, that was just a little thing I didn't like about the storyline. One thing about this movie that I have to go into absolute detail about. A CGI character in this film was so dominant in this film, and he's actually voiced by Sylvester Stallone. Now, I forget how to pronunciate his name. It's Killer King Croc or something like that. But they don't name him that in this movie. His name isn't that in this movie. They call him something else. But I don't know really how to articulate the name, so I'll leave that alone. His role, character, visual aesthetics, what he looked like in this movie was perfect. Really. It was perfect. It was perfect. The way they made him look in this movie was outstandingly brilliant on every level imaginable. Every level imaginable. It was perfect. I honestly could not believe how outstandingly brilliant King Killer Croc, whatever his name is in the comics, was in this movie. Seriously. I could not. His skin texture was perfect. I literally could not believe. Now, I need to tell you about this because this is incredible. It is so rare for me to see a movie that is that good that I actually have to rewind it because I laughed so hard. And no spoilers. I'm just going to tell you about this scene that made me laugh so hard. Viola Davis is about to press a button to do something to another character in the film, okay? And then something happens to the situation that is in. And maybe 3 bits of dialogue later, the lady that executes something with Viola Davis's character, right? She says something to a guy over her left shoulder. It might be her right shoulder, but from the camera's point of view, it was her left shoulder. I laughed so freaking hard at that scene. I rewound it 3 times. I laughed so hard just because of how she speaks, treats, and responds to this guy. It was so funny. It was so funny. This movie is rewindable. Like, literally rewindable. Like, if you watch a sequence of an element of this movie, there's parts that will make you laugh harder than hard. Honestly, that you will just rewind it. Because it's that funny. It really is that funny. They have absolutely taken this movie to a stratospheric level of humor and just continuity to the most outstanding element. It is just incredible. I just thought of another part of this movie. Bloodsport says to another character, "That's your mum," right? And this character does something, like, no spoilers, he does something, okay? And he hurts something, okay? And those of you who have seen the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about right here. And those of you who haven't seen the movie, when you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. When he says, when Bloodsport goes, "That's your mum," something is hurt. He's hurt something. Now, that's not the funny part. Well, that's funny as well because of what that thing turns into. But what's funnier is the reaction of the people behind it. I laughed so hard. It was so funny. Oh my gosh. Guys, this movie is the biggest win in DC film. It is the biggest win for DC film. Now, in my personal opinion, I think the title is probably the biggest flaw in this movie. Like, The Suicide Squad. I get it, but that was, in my personal opinion, guys, the biggest flaw in this film. It just was. And that's not even a bad thing. Like, I'm literally nitpicking right now. This film is a masterpiece. This film is an absolute masterpiece. Would I personally encourage you to take your children to see something like this? No, I wouldn't. Because there's some things in this that you're just like, well, that's, children shouldn't be watching this film. But you might think that your child is mature enough to watch something like this. Whatever. That's on you. Do you know what I mean? If that's how you feel about it, sweet as. Guys, I thoroughly recommend that you go out and check out The Suicide Squad if you haven't already, because you'll love it. Seriously, you'll love it. You guys are amazing. I appreciate you being here. I'm going to wrap this movie review up, and obviously at the end of my movie review, I give you trivia, and then I give you a little ending. But guys, honestly, those of you who have been following my channel for any period of time, you know what time it is in my movie reviews, and there's a fair bit of it because I gave you it all, and you guys are so worth it. Guys, it's time in my movie review to give you guys trivia, because in my personal opinion, guys, trivia is like icing on a cake. Who doesn't love cake? I love cake. So guys, without further ado, you guys know what time it is. Guys, it's trivia time! James Gunn specifically fulfilled the Suicide Squad with obscure and unknown villains since he felt that it was more faithful to the squad in the comics. I wanted to stick with John Ostrands as the original vision of most second-grade antagonists. There's an innate tragic element to supervillains who aren't even that good at being bad. Idris Elba was initially hired to replace Will Smith as Floyd Lawton, a Deadshot, but it was later decided that Elba would play a new character, Bloodsport, to allow Smith to return in the future. Margot Robbie said that she would play Harley Quinn for as long as possible, as she loved playing her in the DC Extended Universe. James Gunn majorly used practical visual effects in this film. He found it a relief after working on the CGI heavy in Guardians of the Galaxy films. As for how James Gunn got Sylvester Stallone to voice the role, it didn't take a whole lot of convincing. Gunn said to him, "I wrote this role for you in the Suicide Squad. It won't take too much of your time." Stallone replied, "Oh, yeah?" To which Gunn said, "Yeah, it's a big, kinda chubby, human-eating shark." Which Stallone said to him, "Anything for you, brother." James Gunn described the film as a 1970s war movie action comedy. James Gunn was brought in to write and potentially direct the sequel following his original departure from Disney. Peter Safran is quoted as saying, "First of all, we don't call it Suicide Squad 2 because it's a total reboot. So it's the Suicide Squad, and I think people should be really extremely excited about it.
It's everything that you would hope for in a James Gunn script, and I think that says a lot, for promises a lot, that they'll know that they'll deliver a lot. However, with a few of the main cast reprising their characters, it is more like a soft reboot. Suicide Squad comic writer John Ostrin plays Dr. Fitzgibbon in the film. James Gunn wasn't refused permission to use any characters he wanted. However, he purposely chose to use mostly lesser-known characters. In a tweet, Gunn wrote, "I considered many more well-known heroes and outlaws, but I wanted to stick with Ostrin's original vision of mostly second-grade antagonists." James Gunn described the film as neither a direct sequel or a reboot of the first film, but that is what it is. Will Smith was set to return as Deadshot, but left due to scheduling conflicts. Harley Quinn sports red and black colors on her hair clothes in this film, based on her appearance in the new 52 DC comics. David Ayer was set to direct a sequel, but was chosen not to come back because of the creative differences and the disappointing reception of the predecessor. Ayer, however, is still attached to helm the spin-off Gotham City Sirens, but the project eventually developed without him as Birds of Prey.
So there you have it, guys. What did you think about the trivia of the Suicide Squad? Did you learn something as well as I did? Because I did. I definitely learned something watching this movie. You guys are absolutely incredible. I appreciate you guys being here so much. You guys are amazing. Thank you. Wholeheartedly, thank you. Again, don't forget who's bringing this movie review for the Suicide Squad. Guys, this is Superman Steve. Appreciating you guys always. Loving your time. Fine!